Hey guys, good morning. It's John with CheatSheetPros. Today is September 4th, 2021, the main start of college football. I had a couple of people email me and ask for a tutorial video regarding sports betting and using the MLB cheat sheet. So I wanted to go back and recap the games that we hit yesterday, which we had another 5-0 day and hit two dogs. You can see here we had Yankees and Tampa Bay as our main parlay, and then we recommended to add in Houston if you wanted to increase that payout. We had two dogs. We had Kansas City plus 115. I really like that one, and that one hit pretty easy. I think it was 7-3 maybe, 7-3, 7-4. And then we had St. Louis plus 160, 165, depending upon your book, and they were up 10-0 by the time I made it home and took a look at it. And then I always put down here like how I'm going to bet these games. It's completely up to you. So I said, Yankees and Tampa, the parlay pays plus 118. And then if you add Houston, that's going to increase the plus 118. And then also I was going to hit a straight bet on Kansas City plus 115. And then also looking at doing a parlay of Yankees, Rays, Houston, and Kansas City. And it paid plus 730 for a half unit. And that one hit. And I know some people did a 5-leg parlay, and that had to pay really good because if we're at plus 730 and then you add a plus 160 dog in there, that's really going to crank it up. So that was a good hit. But the main thing is Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm usually really busy at work. So I post the sheets and I don't get a chance to really dig in or look at it. But then like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, and some Sundays, that's when I actually have time that I can post the sheets and then go back in and look at it if it's a main slate, that starts at 6 and post some games. So I'll throw this on Twitter. You can see the Twitter down here. I'll post it on our Facebook group, etc., etc. But if you know how to use the sheets, you can dig through these games and find the plays every day and kind of make your own decisions and, possibly make some better plays than what I have. So I'm going to go back through these games from yesterday and show you what I look at, what jumps out at me. So there's basically two parts. There's part one, which is how the team's doing right now. And if you come up here, you see the last 10, last 20 games. That's the first place I look. So this St. Louis-Milwaukee game, they're both 6-4 last 10 and 12-8, 13-7. So to me, over the last 20 games, they're pretty much identical. And then if you want to dig in further, these stats right here are going to show you the last 2 weeks, runs per game, home versus road for the season, team average, WOBA, WRC plus, home runs, and then the rankings over here. So on this one, I'm looking at 16-7. They're both kind of in the middle, nothing great. So last 14 runs per game, they're both at 4, and that ranks, it's going to be 4.0 something, so they rank 18th and 16th. So to me, still, these are two even teams, slight advantage to Milwaukee since they're at home. But plus 160 is a huge grab there for someone that I think's even. So the next thing you want to do, part two, is going to be the pitching matchup. You always want to look at the pitching, so that we're going to go down here. And this is the key right here. So this totals, this is the top of the season, what they're doing. And then this top is always where they're at. So the pitcher on the left is always going to be Milwaukee. It's always going to be the home on top. And then for Wainwright, it's on top's always going to be away. So you can look at the totals, and then you can see what their current split looks like. In this one, there's really no split. I mean, he's allowing a 215 average for the season, 218, 214. One caveat I want to put in there is make sure there's enough innings pitched if you're going to use this. If it's less than, if you'll see some where they get called up or get a start, and it's 12 innings, 18 innings, 20 innings, just throw it out the window. It doesn't even matter at that point. But 169 innings, you can say with confidence, these numbers are pretty accurate. So looking at these, I mean, I'm in the same boat. These pitchers would be in the same tier for me, side by side right now. I mean, you've got a 2.45 ERA, 2.97 ERA, 0.94 WHIP, 1.03 WHIP, allowing a 150 average, allowing a 215 average. I mean, they're both good pitchers. And then one thing I always do is I want to have something pulled up where I can see their last 2 or 3 starts. You can do the MLB prize and prop sheet. I've been reloading it, so it's eating up a ton of my RAM. You can do baseballreference.com. If you have an optimizer, that'll work. So here's one. I usually pull this one up and I click through the games every day to see how the pitcher's doing. So now keep in mind this game happened yesterday, so I did not see this when I was looking through it. So Freddie Peralta, I'm looking at the dates here. Oh, that's odd. It's got him on throwing 8-9 and 8-10, so he didn't throw both of those games. So let's say he threw 8-10, 8-18. He gave up 3 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs. So we could say, hey, he's probably going to give up a couple of runs. He's not unhittable, but he is a good pitcher. And then you come over here and we look at Wainwright. Now keep in mind this was yesterday, so this is what I'm looking at here. And all of a sudden I see this green, which these are the DK points per game. And then I always look at the earned run column. So 0, 0, 2, 0. It's like, holy crap. This guy has 4 starts, however many innings this is, and he's only given up 2 runs. In 3 of those starts, he didn't even give up a run. So the first thing I like is he's not giving up a lot of earned runs. The second thing I like is he's going deep into games. So I had our prize and prop sheet pulled up, and you can see he's throwing around 100 pitches. But look, he's getting into the 7th, the 8th inning, and the 9th inning, 7th, 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 7th. So I don't worry too much about the bullpen struggling if he's going to go that deep. I mean, if he gives up 2 runs or less, I mean, yeah, I'll take a plus 160, 165 dog because they only need to score a couple of runs to kind of stay in this and have a shot at winning. The one thing that did jump out at me was this game right here. He did face Milwaukee on 8-17, and he went 6 innings, but he gave up 9 hits and 2 runs. So this was a little bit of a red flag, but plus 160, I mean, we're getting plenty of juice back for this. So this is what popped up with the first game, or the first dog that I liked. The other one, let me look at Kansas City. So I live in Kansas City, so I follow them quite a bit. So Kansas City as a dog, they're a pesky team. I mean, they don't strike out very much. They either put up 0 or 1 runs, or they'll blow up and knock a team out. I mean, we used to face Chris Sale when he was with Boston all the time, and we would beat him once or twice a year because they traditionally hit lefties really well. So when I first look at this line, I was like leaning all over Chicago, just because the White Sox, they're competing for a playoff spot. I mean, they're 78 and 56. So we're going to go down here and look at this. I want to see how the team is currently doing. So you have the White Sox have won 3, Kansas City's lost 4. That's not good for a Kansas City side. So at that point, I'm on the White Sox. But then you come over here and you look at last 10, last 20 games. Last 10 kind of flip-flop, but last 20, 11 and 9, 10 and 10. Well, heck, these teams they're about the same to me at this point. So one thing I want to see, Kansas City's playing at home. So I'm going to look at the home-away splits because I want to look into it a little bit more. So they're 27 and 40 on the road, 32 and 34 at home, so that's significantly better. Their WRC plus goes from 80 to almost 93. Their WOBA jumps up. Their team batting average is 232 on the road, 255 at home. It's not great, but it's an improvement, which is what I want to show. And then their strikeout rate even drops from 22.9 down to 20.1, so they play much better at home. And then you can look at lefty-righty splits, and I've got a little today column wherever that's, so they're facing a lefty, and you can kind of see their stats there, there's nothing that jumps out at me right there. As far as the money movement, you can see a bunch of money had came in on Chicago. They opened up at minus 105, and they were out to minus 122 the last time I saved this, so 17 points were coming in on Chicago. Sides, money is kind of split. A lot of people on the over. Look at the last 10 power rankings, 8-17, runs per game. This is favored Chicago. They're the 3rd best at 5.2 versus Kansas City at only 4.1. So at this point, the line kind of justifies where it's at. But then when we come down here and we look at the pitching matchup, this is what really swayed me over to Kansas City. So the BVP, 55 at-bats, there's not a ton, but 55 is something to at least consider. So right now, Carlos Hernandez, a lot of people don't know him. He's a rookie. He threw 14 innings last year, so not quite a rookie, but pretty much. So Carlos Hernandez was going out for Kansas City, and you can see he's got a 3.62 ERA, 4.34 xFIP, allowing a 2.16 average, and that's through 64 innings. That's really good. So that intrigued me to look at his recent games and see how he's been doing. Now the BVP, I want 80 to 100 at-bats. It's hard to get that, but 55 at-bats, you could say with confidence that they faced him quite a bit. Well, they were 5 for 55, batting .091 with a 25% strikeout rate. That's, it's a grain of salt. It's something to consider. And Chicago's been pretty hot on the top side of the lineup. You can see these player grades here are good. Bottom half, not as good. Vaughn, I know him because I picked him up in all my fantasy leagues, and he's been sucking. But you got 217, 227, 227. So they've got a solid part of the lineup, weak part of the lineup. And what I like here is the solid part of the lineup. Look at their BVP. So Moncada is 0 for 10. Abreu is 2 for 16. And Eloy is 0 for 14. So we have some good BVP history here and good stats for Kansas City. So I want to go over here and just see, what was Carlos Hernandez doing before this game. I like looking at the last 3 or 4 starts. Well, right here I see green, green, green. I know he's been doing good, earned runs. He allowed 2, 0, 1, had a 4 game. That was against Houston, so let's give him a break there. And then 1, 1, 0. So if we kick out this game against Houston, he allowed 2, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. So he's got a string of phenomenal starts. And, he's faced the White Sox twice. He went 5 innings, 1 run, 6 innings, no runs. Faced the Yankees, went 6.2, 1 run, and then some weaker teams. So he's phenomenal. So I love the pitching matchup here. It's against a tough team, but Carlos Hernandez is on my radar. I even wrote him up for fantasy as a pitcher to use. How did he end up doing? 15 points. He was $5,000, so he got 3x, so that's good. As far as the Kansas City side, now I want to look at who they're facing. Now, BVP, 117 at-bats. They have not been doing very well against him, but I threw this out the window. So Keuchel, he's typically, I don't really care for him that much. So we've got 136 innings, and he's got an ERA of 5, xFIP of 4.5, allowing a 270 average, and the WHIP, anything over 1.3, start to really look at. 1.41 is a huge amount. So I wanted to go look at Keuchel and see how he's been doing over recent starts. We know Hernandez is stellar and not very many people know about him, which you can tell by all this money coming in on Chicago. So when we go over here and we look at Keuchel, and if he's been doing well, I'm probably going to stay away from this game. But you see red, and like for fantasy, -1, -10, and this was yesterday. So let me close it. So I couldn't see this one. So he's coming off of a start against the Cubs, who are not very good, where he went 1 inning, gave up 7 hits, 5 earned runs. That's awful. Start before was at Tampa, tough team. 5 innings, 9 hits, 6 runs. Ooh. And then he went Oakland, 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs. Decent. And then 4 runs here. So I'm looking at his last 2 starts. He gave up 11 earned runs in 6 innings with 16 hits. So he's obviously struggling. So when I come over here and look at this, I get a team that's plus money with a solid pitcher, again with a solid pitcher, great BVP, going against a team that's good, but again, they're doing about the same as Kansas City over the last 20 games against a pitcher who is mightily struggling and coming off 2 bad starts. Kansas City is a stamp for me, and that was one of my straight bets. Plus 115 is what I locked it in at. It could have been higher some of your books. My book sucks, so that was how I found the other dog. The other games that we went with, let me see here. So the Yankees were the top game on here. Let me close that. So New York Yankees, Baltimore. Let me find that. All right, New York Yankees and Baltimore. So we pull this game up. You can't make money betting MLB when you're laying 200, 250, 300, but if you mix a couple of them together, you can get a straight bet. You can see normally all the money comes in on the Yankees, obviously. Money hasn't moved a lot over here. So I'm going to go here, like every other game, I'm going to look at the streak, the last 10. So you can see Baltimore's 3-7, 6-4. Okay, New York's doing a little bit better. That's fine. 3-7's not good, but it's not terrible. But then the last 20 games, this is what really jumped out at me that I wrote in my article, is Yankees are 15-5, but Baltimore's 3-17. So they've only won 3 out of the last 20 games. Okay, I don't care who's pitching at that point. Like, I want to throw the Yankees in a parlay just because they're at home and they're facing a team that's struggling mightily. You can even see here how they do versus teams with records above or below 500 and whatnot. But you come down here, power rankings, 15 is not terrible. I mean, they're ninth in runs per game over the last 2 weeks, so I mean they've been decent. So by all means, this isn't a walkover game, but with the Yankees sitting at number 2, they're fourth in runs per game over the last 2 weeks. They're going to be slightly better. So I want to come down here and I want to look at the pitching matchup. So a lot of people had asked me on my DFS post in another group, why don't you have the Yankees in there? Well, John Means, when you look at him, he's a good pitcher. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him. He's got 114 innings. He's got an ERA under 3.5, and he's got a great split. His road ERA is 2.39. I mean, his home ERA is 5.01, but on the road 2.39. That's solid. I can't, really stack against that with confidence. And then look at his road stats. 67 innings on the road with a .84 whip and 197 allowed average, and that's better than his 221 average. So bullpen behind him stinks. So if we can get him out of the game, we can go to town. But that's not a slouch pitcher by any means. So I want to go in and see, how's Means been doing. Pull up here. And so this is the game yesterday that we couldn't see. So he's given up 2, 3, 4, 6. So he's been struggling a little bit. You give up 6 runs to a Detroit team. That's pretty bad. Tampa is fine. They're a stout offense. Atlanta's pretty good. 3 runs in 6 innings. So he's given up some runs. He's not giving away the farm by any means, but he's got a bad bullpen behind him. So we like that. BVP, 37 at-bats, hitting 297. Not enough at-bats, but it would make me kind of look at Judge, who's 2 for 10 with 5 strikeouts, and say if I'm playing DFS, maybe I'm going to skip over Judge to be contrarian here and go 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatnot. So, Means decent pitcher, good, not great. New York, much better team. So, Cortez, I want to make sure this guy's not a slouch before I put New York in the parlay. So, he's got 61 innings, allowing a 2.11 average. 2.77 ERA. He's got a good split at home. He's got a 1.75 ERA at home, but his xFIP is 4.3, so that means he's more around a 4 ERA pitcher, and that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Great on the batting average allowed. I love the whip numbers. 0.9 at home, that's really good. Good bullpen behind him. So, I'd put Cortez right there. I just want to look at his last couple games and see, if he's only given up 2 or 3 runs a start, then we're going to roll with that. And so we didn't see this top game. So we saw he went 5 innings at Oakland, gave up 3. Then he went 7 innings at Minnesota, gave up 2. 6 innings at Chicago, gave up 1. So 3, 2, 1. That's not bad. And he's usually going about 6 innings roughly. New York really doesn't run starters deep because their bullpen's so good. So this game jumped out. I like New York to start off a parlay. I do not like betting it at 220, and they end up winning and covering. Let me look and see what the final score was on that, if I can get my phone up here. So New York yesterday, that was one of the... So, okay, that was a close game. They won 4-3 in extra innings. So in this, you had 2 equivalent pitchers, 2 decent teams, even though Baltimore hasn't won a lot of games, they're putting up some runs, so that was a close one. So I'd say we squeak that one out now. Tampa and the Twins, that was the second game that we liked. So Tampa and the Twins, we come in here, we got... so obviously Tampa's going to be, in that, minus 180 to minus 220 range just because they're doing good. We're going to look at recent history. This is kind of alarming. Both teams have lost 2, so it's hard for me to lay 200 on a team that's starting to lose games. But over the last 10, they're 8-2 versus 4-6, so that's good. That gives me a leg up to Tampa. Tampa's also at home. I like that. Last 20 games, we got 15-5 versus 10-10. Slightly better. Minnesota's not terrible. I'm not going to rule them out completely yet. But then this is where I really start to lean Tampa Bay. I look here and I say, okay, we got the 28th team versus the first team over our last 10 custom power rankings. So that's phenomenal. And then right here, this is the kicker that pretty much locked Tampa in for my second game. So Minnesota is scoring 3.3 runs per game over the last 2 weeks, which ranks 25th. and then Tampa is 5.6, which is first. So to me, 15-5, number one power ranking, number one runs per game. As long as the pitching matchup isn't brutal, then I'm going to go with it. Now, if you want to dig into that further, you come over here to Minnesota. These are fantasy points per game on DK over the last week and 2 weeks. And it's pretty simple. Blue is bad. Blue means they haven't been doing anything. They're really low. And I mean, look, the 1 hitter, the 2 hitter, the 5 hitter, and then the 7, the 8, the 9. Now, you can keep in mind every time you open up this sheet, you see pending or confirmed. When you open it, it goes out and it grabs the lineup. If it's still pending, it'll say red. If it's confirmed, it'll show green. But then you can really see their strikeout rate, how they've been doing, player grades. BVP gives you a good glimpse. But you can just look right here and say, you know, this is a low production team right now. They're really not doing much. But when you come over here at Tampa, you see low as well. But again, I want to see the starting lineup. But they've got some decent players up here kind of in the middle. I mean, Nelson Cruz is gauging low. It's Nelson Cruz. Like, come on. So next thing I want to do, so right now I'm leaning Tampa Bay by what I've seen so far. I want to look at the pitching matchup. So I have Waka versus Randy Dobnak, however you say that. Bullpen 1 versus 17. Okay, yes, Tampa has a good bullpen. We can go with that. Waka, stats are not good. 5.7 ERA, but his xFIP is 4, so I say, okay, he's more of a 4 ERA type of pitcher, allowing a 2.99 average. That scares the hell out of me. Dobnak, he's only got 43 innings, but these numbers jump out. A 1.65 whip and allowing a 3.24 average. So if this was over, 12 to 18 innings, I'd be like, who cares? But 43 innings, allowing a 3.24 batting average, that's, I mean, his BABIP's really high, but still, that's something we want to look at. So right now, in my mind, I'm leaning Tampa. Both pitchers are not good, but I think Waka is going to be the better pitcher. So we're going to come in here. First thing I want to do is I want to look at Waka and see, you know, can he just manage this game? And he did, but we couldn't see this line yesterday. So I'm looking at his last couple starts, and one thing that jumps out. So he allowed 1 run, 3 run, and then he had a horrible stretch of 7, 5, and 6 against some mediocre teams. Now, he went up against, say this is Minnesota. So he faced Minnesota back on the 14th and went 5 innings, 11-7. So he got crushed in that game. So hopefully it's not that bad. But his last couple starts, you know, we got 9.1 innings, 4 runs. Not great, but, you know, enough that we can likely manage the game. And knowing Tampa wants to win, if he gets in trouble, they're going to pull him out and go to the bullpen. So I don't love it, but definitely someone I want on the radar. And then Randy Dobby. So we come up here. This was the game yesterday that we couldn't see. And we see 2 runs, 6 runs, 8 runs. So I'm looking at these last 3. Texas is an awful team, so 5 innings, 2 runs. I don't even consider that a good start against Texas. So Houston and New York, those are decent teams. He went 2 innings, gave up 6 runs, and then 4.2 innings, gave up 8 runs. So Randy's awful. So I come back here. I'm stamping Tampa as the game 2 in my parlay. Much better team. Don't love Waka, but I know they've got this bullpen. They're going to save it, and this guy's going to get absolutely crushed. So that's what I'm looking at. And then this game ended. I know it won. Let me see what the score was. Tampa, they won 5-3. So they covered the run line on that. So we got that win. That was good. And what was the other game? Houston. So Houston was a game that I hit late. Let me go ahead and close this out. I don't need that anymore. So Houston, this didn't have a line on it when I first saved this sheet. The first thing, all right, let's start from the beginning like a new process. So we look at this game, 5-5, 4-6, 11-9, 6-14. Looking at this, neither team jumps out. Looking at last 20, 11-9 versus 6-14. I'm leaning Houston here. The line on this ended up being Houston minus 130, which I thought it would have been minus 170, minus 180. I was kind of shocked. So I hit the run line on it at plus 125 and did well. But when you're looking at this, you're like, I'm kind of up in the air right now. And especially the last 10 power rank, Houston's really been struggling. Now, you could dig in and see, maybe they faced some Garrett Cole type pitchers and they struggled. I didn't have that much time, so I didn't worry about it. But runs per game, they were still 13th versus San Diego, who's 2.9 runs over the last 2 weeks. So I'm looking at this thing, and both teams are struggling right now. We got struggle bus. But the team batting average, Houston is still second over the last 2 weeks at 282, and then the Padres are last at 183. So that's leaning me pointing to Houston again. And then we come down here, WRC plus rank, third versus dead last. So that's leaning me over to Houston a little bit. Home runs, neither team really jumps out. Strikeout rate, 18.7. That's the second lowest in the league, so I like that. So at this point, I am leaning Houston, but I'm not going to lay a minus 150 to 170 line on it. And you can tell I couldn't see the line at this point. And so I go down here, I want to look at the pitching matchup. So that's the next thing. So as far as the teams, I lean Houston, but I don't love it. At this point, it's not a game I'm going to put in there. And I come down here, bullpen, 6-11. I mean, they're pretty much the same at this point. So we have Jake Arrieta. I'm going to glance at his stats. So 89 innings. We got a good amount of innings. ERA of 7. That's freaking awful. WHIP, 178. That's the highest one we've looked at today. And he's allowing a 321 batting average. That is terrible. And then I know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce Jose's name, but I know him because I had him in fantasy all first half of the year. 77 innings, .96 whip, 212 average. That's phenomenal. So you're looking at a 178 whip versus .96, allowing a 321 average versus allowing 212. Bullpen's the same. Team's about the same, but lean Houston. They've been a little better with their underlying numbers. We see a lot of blue over here for the Padres. We do see some blue over here for Houston too, but this pitching matchup is just by far and away favored over here for Houston. So looking at this, now I'm really leaning. I want to know what the line is on Houston. If it's minus 150, I'm probably going to add Houston in there. When I did pull it out, it was minus 130, so I loved it even more. And then I want to go look at the last thing we do is just the recent starts. So I'm going to look. I know Jose is coming off the IL. So, yeah, he didn't pitch. He was pitching in June. And then, so this was the start he had yesterday. He went 4.1, 2 runs. No, not terrible. Not good, not great. But then prior to that, he gave up 1 run, which I'm assuming this is probably when he got hurt. 1.1, 1 run on 1 hit, so that was a home run. But then 0, 2, 3, had a 6 ball, and then 1, 0. So he's got some good stats. So I really like him. He was coming back. He's probably going to throw, 60, 80 pitches, and then they're going to turn it over to the bullpen. So like the pitcher still. And then old Jakey. First thing I see, so we couldn't see this yesterday, is I see negative, 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 6, negative, negative. And I think his pitcher's fucking god-awful. So I want to look at it a little more. I'm going to look, he did throw in Colorado. I kind of threw that one out the window. He threw in Colorado again. Milwaukee's decent, not great. Washington's terrible. Philly's kind of mediocre. Dodgers good. But look, he gave up 5 runs, 8 runs, 4 runs, 2 runs, 7 runs. So, 5, 8, and 7. And 3 of his, 5, 8, 4, 7. So in 4 of his last 5 starts, he's given up more than, 4 earned runs. He's getting murdered. And it's not long bombs. Look, he's consistently getting hit. So these last 3 starts, I think this is what I wrote up. So he's got 4, 8, 9, 10, 11.1 innings, 27 hits, and 17 runs given up. Boom, I'm stamping Houston there with just these underlying numbers. So you see this 30 and it kind of scares you, but you see they're second in batting average, third in WRC plus, decent in runs per game, and they're facing this god-awful pitcher. Like, they're going to go to town here. So I had already had my parlay legs put together, but once I came back home, my kids got out early, and I dug into it. I really liked the run line on this one, and it ended up being, they ended up winning 6-3, and then Arrieta, what'd he do? Yeah, he didn't do terrible. He went 5 innings, 3 runs, and then they yanked him after 64 pitches. So, but Houston ended up pulling off the win to complete our 5-0. But I just kind of wanted to show you what I look at, on the daily games, because everything I write up, I pull directly off of this sheet. I'm looking at how the teams are doing. If you want to dig in more depth than this, you can look at home away splits, righty versus lefty splits. You can see where the money is going. Well, this one didn't have a pull on it yet, so let's just flip over this one. So you can see like where the money's moving, percentage of bets, where they're at, total, power rankings. When you're looking at this, also look at this last 2-week runs per game. And I like looking at the average too, seeing, so like right here, this jumps out. Texas #1 versus LA, who's 25th. And then, look at your pitching matchups. If you want to dig into the teams further, I mean, you can drill down on these guys here and see fantasy points wise how they're doing. I mean, even if you're doing sports betting, if they're putting up a lot of fantasy points, they're doing well. They're hitting the ball. Grade is something. Red is really good, so you can see the guys who are good. If you're doing K-props, you can come in here and see what their strikeout rate is for the pitcher, and then look at their K9 ratio. Pitching, all the stats you want right here. I mean, we've got the innings pitched, ERA, xFIP, WOBA, K9, WHIP, average. I got their BABIP back here. I've got the pitches that they throw in here, how the other team ranks versus these pitching hands. If they threw last year in the 2020 season, we have their stats in and their splits. And this is one game I looked at, so just real quick off of here. So I considered Texas, but I love Ohtani, so I stayed away from it. But Glenn Otto, everybody was looking over him because he didn't have any stats. But when I went over here to look at Glenn Otto, he was the cheapest pitcher on the DFS slate at $5,000. But, he had one start, 5 innings, only allowed 2 hits, no earned runs, 7 strikeouts against Houston. $5,000, why not? Give him a shot. He ended up going 4.2, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts, so not terrible. But, I mean, he wasn't a slouch pitcher to look over. But anyways, that's the quick tutorial on how to find sports betting picks on the cheat sheet. And if you guys want to see any more videos or have any questions, let me know. I've been working on the NFL sheet and the college football sheet. I'm just waiting for some stats from this first week to get loaded in for college football. And then NFL, I'll probably have out Monday, Tuesday, sometime before the Thursday game. So, talk soon.